The European internal market is one of the largest and most powerful in the world. It has a GDP of around $20 trillion. It brings together more than 450 million people. It represents about 15% of world trade, and it is home to more than 32 million companies. For anyone building products, this is a massive opportunity. Access to the EU market means access to one of the richest, most connected, and most stable markets worldwide. But here comes the reality check. This market is not simply open, it is locked. And the only way to unlock it is with the CE marking. The CE marking is the key to the EU market. In order to get the CE marking for products with digital elements, you need to comply with the Cyber Resilience Act. The CRA is now part of the set of requirements behind the CE marking. Without CRA compliance, there will be no CE marking, and without CE marking, there will be no EU market access. This is why the Cyber Resilience Act matters. So having set the goal, accessing the EU market, let me welcome you to this webinar. My name is Florian Drittenthaler. I'm a product line manager at congatec. In this presentation, I will show you how to approach CRA compliance, what it means for embedded systems, and how modularity can help us meet the requirement in a structured and sustainable way. Here is the agenda for today's session. We will start with a short overview of the CRA and why it matters. Then we will look at the impact of CRA on embedded systems and why it is a big deal. After that, we will explore how modularity helps us break down complexity into manageable pieces. We will then dive into concrete CRA requirements and map them to modular solutions. Finally, we will take a closer look at the COM concept, the benefits it brings, and how congatec positions itself with the House of Cybersecurity. This will give us a full picture from business impact to technical detail and back to business value. The CRA, or Cyber Resilience Act, is a regulation of the European Union. It applies to all products with digital elements, meaning hardware and software that have some form of connectivity. It was adopted in 2024 and will become applicable in December 2027. This means from that date on, every product that falls under the CRA must comply in order to get the CE marking and be placed on the EU internal market. Now you might think 2027 is still far away. Why should we worry now? The answer is simple. CRA is not something you can achieve overnight. Compliance requires processes, documentation, security development practices, and product-level security functions. For embedded systems with long development and certification cycles, waiting until 2027 would be far too late. The time to prepare is now. CRA is coming. The Cyber Resilience Act applies to the whole internal EU market. That means that every product with digital elements sold anywhere in the EU will need to comply. So what exactly is covered? The CRA is a regulation that introduces mandatory cybersecurity requirements for hardware and software products with digital elements. The goal is to increase the security of these products throughout the entire life cycle, from design to development to production and to operation in the field. Compliance with the CRA will be mandatory for CE marking. Without it, products simply cannot be placed on the EU market. And how is compliance achieved? Manufacturers must ensure security over the entire lifetime of a product. That includes providing critical software updates for as long as the product is supported. There are also strict requirements on incident reporting. If a vulnerability or attack is discovered, it must be reported within 24 hours. Some things are explicitly out of scope. For example, websites, pure software as a service solutions, free and open source software provided outside of commercial activity, already regulated sectors, and few specific categories of digital elements. The timeline is also fixed. The CRA was adopted in October 2024, And reporting obligations already start next year in September 2026. And from December 11th, 2027, the CRA will be fully enforceable. So in summary, the CRA is mandatory. It applies to all products with digital elements in the EU. It requires full lifecycle security and fast incident reporting. And the clock is already ticking towards 2027. At this point, you might ask, isn't this just another EU regulation? Europe already has so many. How bad can one more be? The difference is most laws apply to specific sectors. The CRA applies horizontally to all products with digital elements. And unlike voluntary standards, compliance is mandatory for CE marking, and without it, you cannot sell in the EU. That makes the CRA a real game changer and not just another law. CRA compliance is not just one requirement, it comes with several big challenges. First, obligations. The regulation defines a wide set of mandatory requirements from secure design to vulnerability handling and documentation. Second, lifecycle. The obligations don't end at the launch. They apply across the entire life of the product, which in embedded systems can mean 10 or even 15 years. Third, product variants. The most companies don't have just one product. They have multiple variants, each of which multiplies the complexity of the compliance workload. Fourth, the global dimension. The CRA may be European, but similar regulations are emerging worldwide. Compliance must be scalable beyond just the EU. Fifth, the resource strain. Meeting those obligations requires expertise, time, and processes. Many teams are already stretched thin. And finally, all of this makes one thing clear: a structured approach is needed. Without structure, compliance quickly becomes unmanageable. And this is what the Cyber Resilience Act looks like in practice. Dozens of pages, detailed requirements, multiple annexes, and cross-references. It's clear. The CRA is complex. Trying to tackle it all at once can feel overwhelming. And that's exactly why we need structure and a modular approach. The solution is to break it down into manageable pieces. And the key to doing that is modularity, defining clear layers, clear responsibilities, and reusing of proven building blocks. Every system can be seen as a set of layers. At the bottom, you have the hardware. On top of that sits the operating system and system software. Then comes the application layer, and finally, you have the processes that ensures updates, documentation, and lifecycle management. Each of these layers has its own scope, each relies on the layer below it, and each has specific responsibilities for cybersecurity. This is why cybersecurity is teamwork. Every player must do their part. Now let's take a step back and breathe. What is the mission of the CRA? If you look at the regulation from a higher level, the goal is not to make life harder for developers. The goal is to ensure the products with digital elements are secure and trustworthy. This means protecting data, preventing tampering, and ensuring system remains available and reliable. And if you think about it in those terms, it is not that bad. It is simply cybersecurity done properly. Now let's translate the CRA's goals into concrete technical measures. We can group them into three core principles of cybersecurity: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality means making sure that only the right people and processes can access data. Examples here are role-based access control to restrict what users can do, disk encryption to protect data at rest, and secure containerization and virtualization to keep workloads isolated from each other. Then integrity ensures that data and systems cannot be tampered with. Some key measures are logging and audit trails to track every action, signatures for updates So only verified software can be installed, a hardware root of trust, which anchors secure boot and BIOS updates. And availability is about keeping systems up and running reliable. Important measures include redundant communication to maintain connectivity if one channel fails, backup and recovery mechanism plus automated crash recovery to minimize downtime, and watchdogs and ruggedized hardware to keep systems stable even under stress. Taken together, these measures show that the CRA compliance is not abstract. It's about implementing proven security mechanisms at every layer guided by the principles of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. A short side note. While there are currently no harmonized standards for the CRA, the IEC 62443 family, especially parts -4, -1 and -4, provide excellent guidance. The IEC 62443-4-1 focuses on secure product development lifecycle requirements, and the IEC 62443-4-2 focuses on technical security requirements for components. Both align very well with the principles of the CRA and can serve as a practical starting point. Let's go a bit deeper and look at how specific CRA requirements can be addressed with modular solutions. Secure by design and default, which is required in Annex 1, can be achieved through secure modules with trusted platform modules, root of trust implementation, and hardened firmware. Security updates can be addressed by coordinated BIOS and firmware update mechanisms. Vulnerability handling and disclosure is supported by a structured vulnerability disclosure policy and lifecycle processes. Risk assessment and lifecycle support are implemented through structured assessment and defined support periods, and technical documentation is supported with ready-to-use documentation packages. This shows how modular building blocks simplify compliance with CRA obligations. So how do we achieve modularity in practice for embedded systems? We need building blocks, modules that encapsulate complex functions with well-defined interfaces and responsibilities. In software, modularity means separating concerns into independent components. In hardware, modularity means using standardized modules that provide a secure and validated core. Both forms of modularity help define boundaries, simplify compliance, and enable reuse. This brings us to the computer on modules, or COMs. A COM is a standardized compute module that contains the CPU, memory, graphics, and firmware. It connects to a carrier board that provides power connectivity and application-specific interfaces. Together, the module and carrier form a complete embedded system. The benefit is that the compute core can be reused across different products, while the carrier board can be customized for specific applications. What are the benefits of this concept? One is reuse. One compute module can be used across multiple products. This leads to scalability. Carrier boards can be adapted while the module remains stable. Or the other way around, you can use one carrier board with different modules and different performance classes. Also, longevity. So module families have long-term roadmaps. This means over the whole life cycle of your system, you can always trust on the next generation of modules and simply upgrade your existing application. Separation of concerns. The module handles core computing and security, and the carrier handles application-specific logic or application-specific connectivity. These benefits make COMs attractive for engineering and also for compliance. Brings the modular parts to CRA into focus. Modularity helps us take the complexity of CRA requirements and simplify them into repeatable, manageable steps. Let's go through each benefit. First, decouple the application from the platform. With modular design, for example using computer modules, the computing core is separated from the carrier board and the application logic. This separation means that when security requirements change or when hardware needs to be updated, you don't have to redesign the entire system. You just work on the relevant layer for the CRA. That makes risk assessment and conformity much easier because the scope is clearly defined. Second, reuse the paperwork. CRA requires extensive technical documentation, risk assessments, update policies, vulnerability handling processes, and lifecycle information. With modularity, you can reuse much of this documentation across multiple products. Because the module itself comes with its own validated security functions and support documents. That means less duplication, faster compliance checks, and fewer errors. Third, scale updates across a portfolio. If you build 10 products on the same module and vulnerability is found, you don't need 10 separate fixes. One BIOS update, one firmware patch, one advisory, and it applies across the entire product family. This is critical for CRA Annex 1 Part 2, which requires coordinated vulnerability handling and timely updates. Fourth, reuse pre-validated security functions. The module already provides security features such as a trusted platform module, a root of trust implementation, secure bootloaders, signed BIOS updates, and sometimes integrated encryption engines. Instead of implementing and validating these from scratch for every product, you inherit them directly. This reduces engineering effort and ensures that CRA requirements around secure design and integrity are already covered. Fifth, you plan for longevity. Embedded products often live for 10 years or more. Modularity gives you a long-term roadmap, drop-in module replacements, and extended software support. This aligns perfectly with Article 13 of the CRA, which requires manufacturers to define and respect a support period and provide updates throughout the lifecycle. By simply upgrading the module or exchanging the module, you can even prolong the life cycle of your system because you don't have to change the carrier board. And finally, clarify responsibilities. CRA is based on the idea of shared responsibility. With modularity, the boundaries are clear. The module vendor ensures the security of the computing core, firmware, and lifecycle processes. The system developer ensures the security of the application and its integration. This clarity simplifies conformity assessments and makes audits far easier to manage. So, when you put all this together, modularity transforms Cyber Resilience Act from a heavy burden into a structured, scalable approach. It simplifies compliance today, and it ensures that compliance remains sustainable tomorrow. We started this presentation with the picture of the EU internal market, a $20 trillion economy, 450 million people, 15% of global trade. But we also saw that this market is locked. The only way to unlock it is with the CE marking. And to get the CE marking for digital products, compliance with the Cyber Resilience Act is mandatory. So here is the good news. With modularity, CRA compliance becomes manageable. By reusing pre-validated security functions, reusing documentation, scaling updates, and clarifying responsibilities, we can make CRA not just a burden, but a repeatable process. And once CRA compliance is achieved, the CE marking follows. And with CE marking, the lock opens. The message is clear: access granted. This is what modularity delivers: a practical path to compliance and with it access to the EU market. To summarize it all, let me introduce to you the house of cybersecurity. Every house needs a strong foundation. In the context of cybersecurity and Cyber Resilience Act, the foundation is built from processes, certifications, and lifecycle support. And this is exactly where congatec provides value. We deliver standard certifications like ISO 27001 and IEC 62443-4-1, proving that security is embedded in our development lifecycle. vulnerability management processes with coordinated disclosure, CVE tracking, and customer notifications. Risk and threat analysis integrated into our development workflow so that products are designed with security in mind from day one. Lifecycle and documentation support, including long-term update policies, patch distribution, and ready-to-use security documentation packages that customers can integrate directly into their conformity assessment. This foundation is secure by design, and you can define it as secure by default. It means our modules are already cover essential CRA requirements, so customers don't have to reinvent the wheel. But a foundation alone doesn't hold up a house. The structure needs strong pillars. These are the three fundamental principles of cybersecurity: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Confidentiality ensures that data is protected from unauthorized access. Integrity ensures that data and systems cannot be tampered with. Availability ensures that systems are reliable and resilient. These pillars are also at the heart of the CRA. They reflect directly Annex 1 Part 1, where requirements for access control, integrity protection, and resilience are defined. And congatec's foundation is built specifically to support these three pillars. On top of the foundation, the walls of the house are built. These represent the system layers that modularity helps us manage: hardware foundation, secure boot, trusted platform modules, ruggedized designs. The system and software and operating system, so patching, virtualization, workload separation, key management. Then we have the application layer, where you have role-based access control, logging, encryption, secure APIs. And you have the process layer at the bottom, so vulnerability handling, incident response, documentation updates. Each of these layers has its own responsibilities, and each of this layer relies on the one below it. And together they cover the broad set of requirements from the CRA. Now the roof is placed on the house. This is the customer application. This is where product differentiation happens. Your operating system choices, your domain-specific logic, your access policies, and deployment environment. The roof makes the house yours, but it can only be secure if it sits on a strong walls supported by pillars and based on a solid foundation. And here is the most important message. Cybersecurity is teamwork. Congatec provides the foundation with certified processes, lifecycle updates, security documentation, secure hardware and firmware features. The customer builds the roof, application-specific controls, integration into target environment, and domain knowledge. This shared responsibility makes compliance achievable. You don't need to build everything yourself. You build on what's already there. So the house of cybersecurity is more than a metaphor. It shows how CRA requirements map to a layered modular architecture. It shows how modularity defines boundaries and clarifies responsibilities. And it shows how congatec provides the secure foundation that makes the path to CRA compliance easier, faster, and more sustainable. With this house in place, you're not just building compliant products, you're building trust, resilience, and long-term access to the European market.